We are going to do SSH. Now, doing SSH, we need to first understand the difference between SSH and Telnet. Telnet uses port 23, SSH uses port 22. Telnet is not secure, insecure. SSH is secure. Now the question is, what do you mean by not secure, insecure, or secure? What is mean by that? So if you understand HTTP and HTTPS, that's the difference. For example, they both are used to connect to the device remotely. So this is your PC and you are going to connect to the, let's say, to the switch remotely from your home or from some other locations. So you can imagine there are other routers, okay? There are hundreds of routers. When you do Telnet, any communication happens between your PC and the device. If someone captures with the Wireshark, he will be able to read the data. He will be able to read the data. However, if you are using SSH, and still people, they will be able to capture the data. Still people, they will be able to capture the data. But the difference is the data will be encrypted in terms of SSH. That means he won't be able to read the data. Now, let's have a look at here. Let's grab a PC. Okay, let's grab a PC as well. Let's grab a few switches. Let's do the connection. Okay, let's label, very important. Okay, there is a shortcut way to configure IP address on the interface, but it is better not to follow this way. Come here and put the IP address. You should turn on the interface. This is like no shutdown. And on the PC, never ever try to configure the IP address from here. Okay, always come here and configure the IP address from here. Okay, now we want to configure. First, you need to configure the device. You need to configure this device. Then only you can do so. First, you need to configure SSH on this device. if you don't configure SSH, you won't be able to do SSH. This is not going to happen. First, you need to configure SSH on this device, then only you can do SSH onto this device. In order to configure this device, you need to configure the device from here. Okay, so if I want to configure this device, let me grab another PC, and I assume that this is a real device, so you need to configure it like a real way through the console. I made a mistake connecting here to the console port. Come here, go to desktop, terminal. Okay, now the first thing is give this machine, you need to give this machine a name. Okay, the configurations are here. So if you look at here, you need to give this machine a name. Let's say R1, or let's say, yeah, then you need to give a domain name. Now the question is, when you are giving the domain name, let me just do this one. This can be anything. This can be anything. It can be wasif.com as well. Okay, it can be anything. It doesn't matter. Okay, now of course you need to create a few users. Okay, and the passwords. This username and password will be stored in the local database of the switch. That means you need to put here login local. Let me just put this one here. So crypto key generate RSA. So if you look at here, just put this command. So if you look at here, it is asking for, now if you understand encryption, encryption requires an algorithm and encryption requires a key. Here, so what did I say? Encryption requires an algorithm and a key. Here the algorithm will be RSA and the key will be, it will be done by the system itself, but you need to give a value for the key. Okay, whether it will be 512 or 1024. Okay, this is related to encryption, so just 512 or 1024 or 2048. I gave 512. Okay, 1024. Okay, you can give anything. Then SSH version 2. Okay, so always better to use the latest one, so we'll use SSH version 2. Okay, now look at here very carefully. Let me put this one as well. So previously, you remember we could put here password as well, and if you put here password, you need to put here login. But now you need to put here login local. Why you need to put here login local? Because you are putting username and password on top of line VTY04. Okay, if you put line password, that means if you put the password inside the line, then you put login, and if you want this local one, local database, then you want login local. Very important to understand here is this is the way we try to use, because in this way for each user you can have a separate password. Otherwise, if you put a password here, then every user will have to use the same password, like everyone knows the same password. Now, as I said, Telnet and SSH, they do the same work but in a different way, and we don't recommend using Telnet because it is insecure. There are security issues. We use SSH. So if you need to explicitly mention that transport input SSH. What does it mean? It means only use SSH. Do not use, so transport input SSH is already there. So Telnet is by default. Telnet is by default. What is that called? Disabled. Telnet is by default disabled. Now let's come here. So this is the bare minimum configuration. Let's do here exit. Okay, now we put a username admin, and secret is Cisco123. Let's come here, try to connect here. SSH, I think -L for login, Cisco username. Now admin is the username. Let's see if it works or not. And the IP address is 192.168.1.1. Password Cisco123. So if you look at here, I was able to get connected. Now, if you do enable, is not going to work. If you do enable, is not going to work. Why it is not going to work? Because you didn't set enable password or enable secret. Okay, so that is why it is recommended enable to configure. It is recommended to configure this with the SSH configuration. Enable secret let's say wasif. Now if you do enable, so if you look at here, now if you do show run, so the secret is there, and if you look at here, you will find the username as well. This is the domain name. You see the username is wasif, and the secret, this is enable secret, sorry. Okay, and if you look at here, the secret is this. But if I just configure something like, now I can configure from here as well. Now I can configure from here as well, because I'm remotely connected. If you do conf term, and if you do username A, password A as well, exit, show run. So if you look at here very carefully, you see username is A, password A. This is in plain text. So if you put secret, then it will be encrypted. Now if you want to encrypt this A, you know that service password encryption. Okay, so if you come here, service password, okay, config terminal, service password encryption, then you do show run. So if you look at here, this is also encrypted, this is also encrypted, this is also encrypted. Now look at here very carefully. This much configuration is required. This is required if you want to encrypt the password, but this is not something that is required to configure SSH. If you want to encrypt the password, plain text passwords, okay? Instead of secret, if you write password. Instead of secret, if you write password. Now, enable secret or enable password is required if you want to connect to the device through telnet or SSH, and if you want to move from user exec mode to the privilege mode. Okay, then either you need to configure enable secret or enable password. The most important thing is device should have a name, that is a must. There should be a domain name, there should be users, because otherwise how do you get connected? And you need to give the device to create the keys, so you need to mention all the information related to the algorithm and the key. IPSS version 2 is better to use, like people, they will use this one. So if you don't put version 2, then maybe there is a possibility of detecting the mark. And of course, after you configure those things, you need to make the device to accept SSH. So line VTY, which will enable remote connections, and login local, that means use the local database. Transport input SSH, which means only use SSH and do not use any other protocol for the remote connection.